unabashed,
the most unpredictable,
becomes a headline,
the most volatile,
outrageous behavior,
unsubstantiated narratives, a battle of personalities.
Welcome to Grant Tamasha, a co-production of the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace and the Hindustan Times. I'm your host, Milan and Smriti. As most of our listeners know by now, the incumbent BJP entered this election as the clear favorite, with every single pre-election survey pointing to a decisive victory. However, it's leaving no stone unturned in its effort to notch a third consecutive parliamentary majority. From addressing concerns about low turnout in the first phase, to ramping up efforts to expand in the South, and raising the volume on its nationalist rhetoric, keeping up with the party's exploits can be a full-time job. And in fact, for this week's guest, it is a full-time job. Smriti Kak Ramachandran covers the BJP for the Hindustan Times. She spent over a decade in journalism and previously worked for The Hindu. As her HT bio puts it, she combines old-fashioned legwork with modern storytelling tools. To talk more about the BJP and where things stand this election, I'm pleased to welcome Smriti to the show for the very first time. Smriti, so good to see you. Thanks for taking the time.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So we are recording this episode just a day before voters in the second phase go to the polls. We know from provisional figures from the Election Commission that voter turnout was lower for the first phase compared to 2019. I want to start by asking you, how concerned is the BJP by this lower turnout, and what steps are they taking perhaps to adjust their campaign, if at all?
So you're absolutely right. There's been a marginal dip because, these are provisional figures and they expect the numbers to be, sort of crawl up a little bit maybe. But that said, the BJP doesn't want, it has set a target of increasing its overall vote share to about 50%. So what we've seen is, for the 102 seats that went to polls on the 19th, for the corresponding phase in 2019, the turnout was about 69.9%, which is now 65.5%. So this doesn't sit well with the BJP brass because, like I explained, they want their overall vote share to increase to a 50%. What they're also equally concerned about is that will this set the template for the other 7 phases? Because, they would want more people to come out. There is a tendency to think that when larger turnout means a vote against the incumbent. But the BJP doesn't believe in that. Since 2014, they've been talking about a pro-incumbency vote. They think that on the basis of the schemes that they have implemented, the policy decisions they brought in, people tend to vote for them based on their work. So they don't believe that there is something called an anti-incumbency factor against them. Now, coming back to the voter turnout, more the merrier. So you will see the BJP having done what you expected to do. From the minute they figured out that the turnout has been lower than before, there was this chain of events that started. There were meetings that went, we were told that one of the meetings went up to wee hours in the morning at the Home Minister's residence with everybody in attendance. I know from reliable sources that state units in Bihar, in Rajasthan, in states where the BJP wants to bag all the seats, they've been pulled up because there is a sense that, there is some complacency in the cadre, there is some, less boots on the ground. They felt that their booth workers, their panna pramukhs, as they call them, people who are in charge of electoral pages, they did not hit the ground as they should have. So a lot of election campaign happened on social media, which the top leadership has not approved of. So going forward, tomorrow we'll know how the voter turnout is in the second phase. But this is a party that's geared to do more and more. In fact, I should add that in March 2019, there was a meeting of the RSS. It's the annual meeting of their highest decision-making body called the Akhil Bharatiya Pratinidhi Sabha. So the issue of increasing the vote share to 50% was first raised there by Amit Shah. He was then the party president. So when he came and gave his report to the RSS, which is the ideological mentor, this is something he underlined that, because they rely on the cadre of the RSS for canvassing, though the RSS likes to maintain that they have nothing to do with electoral politics. But this is something that he had raised then, that the BJP had won the elections in 2014 with a 31% vote share, which is clearly not enough. So he had set the target of 50% in 2019.
I mean, really fascinating to see how this has evolved, and the fact that they have been kind of focused on this for 5 years now. I want to just kind of bring us to the question of the Prime Minister. He addressed a large rally in Rajasthan this week, addressed a whole range of rallies, but one in particular that raised a lot of eyebrows, prompting many observers to call for the Election Commission to censure the Prime Minister. In a speech, Modi said that if the Congress were to return to power, it will gather all the people's wealth and distribute it amongst those who have more children. It was a not-so-veiled reference to the Muslim minority. He went on to claim that Congress would distribute this wealth among quote-unquote infiltrators. Guspetia, I think was the precise word he used. This created a huge blowback, at least on social media. How is that being internalized or received at BJP headquarters?
So, the Prime Minister's campaign began much before the election schedule was announced. We had this whole Viksit Bharat Yatra that started. There was this government, sort of all the policies of the government, all the schemes that have been announced in the past 10 years. So people went from village to village, from city to city, talking about what the development activities of this government have been. So there is, people began to think that this is probably going to be the centerpiece of the election campaign, development. But if you know the BJP, then you realize that, they never shed their ideological belief. There is always something that tethers them to the vote bank that believes in, the othering of a particular caste or a community. So I could, some people can even say this is demonizing a caste or a community, but there is a vote bank that likes to hear certain phrases. They like to hear certain sentiment. So what the Prime Minister has said is clearly in line with holding on to that particular vote bank. And, you would also notice that some of the seats that go to elections tomorrow, particularly in UP, there's a lot of these kind of statements draw a lot of attention. It does not necessarily, backfire for the BJP, because there is a certain constituency which they want to keep close. This constituency likes to hear this. They like the majoritarian sentiment, and that's what he has given them.
I want to just kind of step back for a second from the campaigning and just reflect on the BJP manifesto. Because if you look at that manifesto, which you've written about and will link to your story, it's all about Modi ki guarantee, right? It's a nearly 70-page document. It has guarantees for 10 social groups and 14 different sectors of the economy. One of the questions that I get a lot, I'm sure you do as well, is, how do you think about kind of boiling down or characterizing the BJP's message this poll season, right? In the sense, what are the things that kind of stood out for you from the manifesto that it hopes will galvanize the electorate this time around?
So I think the party has been very smart in its messaging because, after 10 years, what is this new thing they can come up with? A lot of what they've promised in their manifesto in 2014 and 2019 has already been accomplished. In fact, it goes back to the 80s. Ram Mandir, UCC. I mean, these are things that you saw in the BJP manifesto.
Now, Article 370 is another one.
Article 370, exactly. So these are things that have been ticked. The boxes have been ticked. So what is the new thing that the BJP can come up with that just grabs public attention? What they have done, when I say they've been very smart, is because they talk of continuity and expansion. So again, the mainstay of their campaigning is development. This is Viksit Bharat ka agenda. So what they're trying to do is that we have done so much so far, but we will not stop at this. This is going to expand further. So this whole process of, you've sold people a certain image, you've told them that we've come this far, but don't worry, we're not resting here, we're going further. This whole thing of a muscular foreign policy, this whole thing about the economy being on track, like we've left we're no longer counted among the fragile five. We are in the top five, and we are, on way to become the top three economy, etc. In fact, this reminds me of what Congress leader Kamal Nath used to say when he was a minister. He used to say there are only two sentiments in India: doom and boom. So if there is no boom, there is doom. So, this is exactly, they are selling the boom thing. They've captured this whole sentiment that Congress was all about doom and we are all about boom. So tread on.
Smriti, one thing I want to ask you about, and it relates to the manifesto, is something that was not in there, which is mention of the All India National Register for Citizens, or NRC. This is the promised, nationwide enumeration of all residents, which is meant to determine who is a legal resident and who is an illegal alien. The NRC was a big talking point for the party just a few years ago. It was seen in conjunction with the implementation of another BJP promise, the passage of the Citizenship Amendment Act, or CAA. What do insiders think, or what's the reason for why it kind of fell by the wayside?
So this was something that was immediately noticed. This one omission, which was so conspicuous by its absence, because the NRC was such a big issue, and it was sort of dovetailed with CAA. But there's been no explanation on record or off record about why this has been not mentioned in the manifesto. The only thing the party, every time you ask this question, they, the only thing they wanted to focus attention on was the passage of the CAA and how, it's been read entirely wrong. And, there's all kinds of notions being created about India trying to keep people out, or taking away the citizenship rights of the minorities in India. So they have kept the focus entirely on this conversation. Nobody is really telling us why the NRC is not mentioned in the manifesto. But it's easy for us to guess, therefore, that the party wants to play safe. When you have set a target which seems impossible, 400 plus, you want to do everything that you possibly can to make sure that your campaign is not derailed by anything, or there's no negative, publicity for the things that you've promised. So there is a perception among people, among beat reporters, that the party doesn't, they do not see gaining anything by bringing up NRC just now.
So, in other words, I think just now might be an operative phrase, right? Is that it doesn't mean it's kind of disappeared. It's just not a front burner issue this election cycle.
Exactly, because the BJP has been known to be politically expedient. If you remember, when they formed the government, the coalition government with the PDP in J&K, suddenly there was no mention of abrogation of Article 370. This is something that was in their manifesto for decades, but suddenly they went slow on it. I mean, there was no talk of abrogation of Article 370.
Right. No, I think that it's true. And in fact, scholars who have written about the BJP have often talked about this balancing act, right, between kind of expanding, accommodating, expanding, and there's this constant kind of push and pull. You mentioned the 400 seat ambition of the BJP, or the ambition for its alliance. Now, there's been some reporting coming out of India that suggests, that the high command believes that, this may be working at cross purposes because it is prompting uncomfortable questions about potential plans to change the constitution. Because obviously, if you get a majority of that size, you have the 2/3 requirement that you would need in both houses to make significant changes to the Constitution. Do you think, at least publicly, the BJP is going to be kind of modifying or lowering expectations to try and pacify people who are raising some of these concerns about big sweeping constitutional changes?
So, the BJP and the RSS both have been very they've made a concerted effort to sort of deny this whole allegation that they are out to change the constitution. The Prime Minister has been leading from the front. If you listen to some of his speeches, he's been very vehement in denying that the BJP has any ulterior motive or a hidden agenda to change and alter the constitution. In fact, in one of his speeches, he said, even if B.R. Ambedkar wanted to change it today, he would not be able to do so. So, so of course, they've been trying to dispel fears. But at the same time, it's hard to overlook the statements from its own party leaders. There have been a bunch of lawmakers, there have been a bunch of leaders who at various times have said that we need to revisit the constitution. It doesn't sit well with what the Prime Minister says, but it has happened. In fact, there was a during the last session, special session of Parliament in December, there was a little bit of a controversy when all the lawmakers, because it was the first session in the new building, so all the lawmakers were given a copy of the Constitution. So some of the Congress MPs alleged that the copy that they have, it does not have the words secular. And of course, it sets off concerns. There's a lot of, sort of buzz around it? Is the government trying to, is there an underlying message there? But the government was quick to point out that no, we've given you 2 copies of the constitution. One is the old and one is the new. So, and they were very quick to, sort of defend this whole giving 2 copies. The amendment was made in 1976. So what happened prior to that? We should just stick to. So yeah, there are these little indicators that there is a section of people who may prefer some kind of changes to the constitution, especially with regard to the word secular and socialist. So, but for now, it seems, the Prime Minister is leading this whole thing that we are not changing the constitution. In fact, if they don't really, it's not like they need all these 400 lawmakers to be able to take tough decisions. If you look at the past term, they did not have the numbers in the Rajya Sabha, but they managed to do everything that they set out to do. They managed to pass the CAA, they managed to outlaw triple talaq, they managed to abrogate Article 370. So, they've been very forceful and they've been very effective in doing what they set out to do.
And, I think so. There's 2 arguments that you hear. One is that when they've wanted to make big changes, they've managed the numbers by hook or by crook. And the second is it's not necessary for them to change the Constitution to achieve all of their objectives, right? There's actually a lot they can do short of kind of reimagining this document. Just to go back to something that I failed to kind of pick up when we talked about Modi's speech in Rajasthan, is we've seen an interesting response from the Congress Party, not totally planned. Of course, you had a statement from Rahul Gandhi about the need to do a kind of nationwide survey to determine, wealth and wealth accumulation. That, of course, fed into the Prime Minister's statement about, redistribution. Then you had an advisor to the Congress Party sitting in the United States, Sam Petroda, who kind of doubled down on the idea of an inheritance tax. The BJP has had a field day with that. Of course, then it's come out later that many BJP leaders have historically been in favor of such a thing. But my sense is, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the BJP sees this as a completely winner of an issue. That to the extent that Congress keeps harping on this the question of redistribution, of needing to reallocate resources, that this is going to politically prove to be very positive for the BJP. Is that your sense that they want the Congress to just keep doubling down because that's going to kind of work in their favor?
So, it didn't matter what the Congress had actually said, because the BJP picked what it wanted to hear and they ran with it. So nobody had the time to counter, question, cross-check, fact-check, because the narrative was so compelling that people on the street began to actually believe, without, doing the necessary checks and gatekeeping on whether this is actually being said or whether this was really intended. So that is the power of BJP's narrative. It's the power of how they grasp something and they run with it, and they, and the opposition just keeps, chasing. So in this case, even today, the Prime Minister has been constantly making a reference to this concept of, doing some kind of a revisiting the wealth of people, redistributing it, some kind of modern day Robin Hood. Now, everybody wants to, this is an aspirational society. So everybody wants to be, in a bracket above where they are right now. But that does not necessarily mean that, people would want to part with even a penny. This is a country that's had the Bhudan movement, but that was long ago. That was a different time. That there was a different set of people. There was a different sentiment on the ground at that time. Right now, if you tell, we are also a country that has a tradition of philanthropy, but most of it's either based on religion or superstition or whatever. Very little to do with the fact that, from the goodness of people's heart, that they want to open a hospital or a college, But this whole fear that has been sort of instilled in people's minds that the government will, the Congress, if it comes to power, will, basically take away what's yours. It's a very compelling fear. It's something that people, they're talking about it everywhere. And BJP's work is done, of course.
Hey, Grant the Masha listeners. Thanks for listening to the podcast. Putting this show together each week is a labor of love, but it takes a lot of work to put out a great show every week. If you'd like to support the work we do at Grant the Masha, please visit ceip.org/donate Don't forget to subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or on your favorite podcasting platform so you'll be the first to know when a new episode rolls out. I want to just, I'm tempted to keep going here, but I realize there's a lot more to talk about. And I want to pivot a bit to talking about some specific states where you've had some very interesting insights. And let me start with Odisha, which is an eastern state. The BJP did better than expected in 2019. Of course, it is up against a very strong incumbent in Naveen Patnaik and the BJD. You published a piece last week, and we'll link to it, with the headline, Odisha is giving the BJP sleepless nights. And I wonder if you could expand on that, right? Because again, I think if you're looking from this from the outside, you say, well, the BJP has now emerged as the single biggest opposition party. It's established a foothold at the parliamentary constituency level. Why do you think they're stressed out about it today?
The BJD and BJP have had very friendly ties. In fact, in colloquially, Parliament reporters call it a friendly party. They have stood by the government. They have lent support whenever the government needed it in the Rajya Sabha for various issues. But there is a limit to being friendly, because after all, this is an election, and a lot of people realize that this is Naveen Patnaik's. He's aging, and so there is a perception that, this could be his last election in terms of, fighting an election. But he is, he's remarkable. He's now fighting election from 2 seats, which has made things very hard for the BJP, because he knows that, he's going to be rallying support for his party from both the assembly constituencies that he's fighting for. The BJP has, on the other hand, they see a possibility of emerging as an alternate to the BJD. They do not want this to cede this space to the Congress. So they are doing everything that they possibly can to, again, emerge as the principal opposition, to emerge as an alternative. In between, you'd remember there was this whole buzz about the BJD and the BJP aligning. Now, there were some people who thought that this would be a very, this would change the game and work to the BJP's advantage. But a number of people that I spoke to in the state, BJP leaders, they were very upset about it, because they said, this is our chance. The BJD is on the wane. It's, it may not have the same kind of, after Naveen Patnaik stops contesting elections, it may not have the same hold on people. So this is where the BJP gets this, gets the space to move in. They also feel that, there is a certain people do realize that Modi government's, this whole Labharthis, the beneficiaries, there is a resonance on the ground about that. So they felt that, things could change on the ground. There's a long period of time. They can shift the narrative. So they didn't want the partnership, because they wanted to fight and contest alone. Now, having said that, the BJD is also pulling out all the stops to ensure that it does better and better than before. They already have a record. 5 times they've won the state assembly elections. They're on way to win it for the 6th time. So it's going to be a very interesting election. It's going to be a very interesting battle, because both the sides are going to bring their A game to the table.
So I want to ask you about another state, switching geographies here, moving to the north, the state you know very well, the state of Jammu and Kashmir. It's recently come out that neither the BJP nor any of its pre-poll allies are contesting 3 seats in the state. And I think this decision surprised a lot of observers, given the government's 2019 decision to abrogate Article 370, try to reimagine, refashion the politics of the Union territory. There's been some controversy more recently about its pick for the Ladakh seat. You've also reported on that. How is the High Command thinking about its prospects in J&K and Ladakh this time around?
So again, this is terrible optics for the party, because let's see, where did the 370 figure come from? It came from abrogation of 370. What did the Prime Minister say in Parliament? He said this is going to be a homage to Deen Dayal Upadhyay. It's going to be a homage to Shyama Prasad Mukherjee, who died in mysterious circumstances in a prison in J&K. So, people were expecting the BJP to at least put up a fight in the valley. So, it makes... it's like I said, it's bad optics for the party that they have run away without even trying to put up fight without, and their cadre in the state is not particularly happy about it because they feel that somewhere the party erred in not projecting a face in the valley, cultivating leadership in the valley. Of course, the writing on the wall was that they would not do very well. There is an anti-BJP sentiment in the valley. Getting votes would have been a very difficult challenge. All of that is there. But why not fight? Lose honorably, at least put up a fight. Then again, in Ladakh, now this was BJP's success story because Ladakh for decades had been pushing to be, it wanted to be a union. It designated as the union territory. It did not want to be clubbed with Jammu and Kashmir for various reasons, particularly that it felt that it did not get the resources that it should have got for N number of projects, from healthcare to education to infrastructure. So they had a grouse that, they are overlooked when it comes to allocation of monies. Plus, it's a very different identity from the rest of the state. They were concerned about their demography. They were concerned about their land and their language. So when the BJP finally managed to bifurcate the state and carve out these two union territories, Ladakhis were euphoric. I mean, it's something that they had wanted for so long. It has happened on the ground eventually. But again, the BJP made terrible, terrible blunders there. It has not been able to convey to the people that their land and their language is going to be protected. They have, there is China right there. So, there are these fears that what will happen if China intrudes. They already have concerns about not having access to grazing grounds that they've had access to before. In such a situation, the party could have done better. It could have communicated better. They had a young MP, a popular MP, who should have been able to convey to the people that, their rights are being protected. But he somehow couldn't do that. So the grouse in Ladakh right now is that he was not able to speak up for his people. And, the anger against the MP has now transferred to anger against the party. So it doesn't look very good for them.
I mean, it's a really fascinating turn of events, in some ways also just instructive about the party, because we do think of the party as a kind of, omniscient, extremely strategic entity, which kind of makes all the right decisions. But it shows you that there are limits to that, right? I mean, here's a place where you spent a lot of political capital to take this bold decision to change the status, to change the game, and certainly part of the thinking. And I remember, back in September 2019, there were stories in the HT and elsewhere about who the BJP might wish to put forward as their favored, choice or potential leader, and so on and so forth. And it's interesting that 5 years later, that's still a big question mark. And like you said, there seems to be a disconnect between the cadre and the rank and file, who very much want to be in the fight, and the leadership seems to be pulling back.
Yes, because, let's also face the fact that, like I said, there is a sentiment against the BJP in the valley. It has not been easy for people to be part of the BJP, Of course, you'll keep hearing things about the BJP's A team and B team and C team, but people who have it's true. But, people who have actually sort of signed on the party, signing form, and they're officially party leaders and officially BJP leaders, there's, among other things, there's also a security concern for them. So if they are sticking their neck out and they want to be seen as your face in the valley, then it's incumbent on the party to also do a bit more for them. I mean, why not cultivate a face in the valley? Why not cultivate more than just one face in the valley?
So I want to kind of move from north to south here and ask you about one more state in particular, which is Tamil Nadu. The BJP has made no secret of its desire to make new inroads into southern India. The polling is complete in Tamil Nadu. It was a phase 1 state. Obviously, voting in other southern states is still in the offing. But sticking with Tamil Nadu for a second, what feedback has the party gotten about the voting in phase 1? Are they optimistic? Are they nervous? And what are the other parts of the South that they seem to be honing in on as areas where they can kind of make a breakthrough?
So I'll digress a little here because In 2016, we're going back a little. In 2016, there was the party's National Executive Committee meeting, which happens annually. That is when they decided that they have already made gains in the northern part of the country, but what remains is their expansion down south. So they came up with this whole idea of expanding their footprint in the southern states in the eastern parts of the country. So this whole it was called the Coromandel belt that the BJP wanted to basically had set its eyes on. So Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh, Odisha, West Bengal, they were part of this whole Coromandel project where the BJP wanted to, sort of intensify outreach, identify leaders. Since the party doesn't always organically grow, they also believe in acquisitions. So all of that was happening. Now, Karnataka is the only state where they've been sort of in and out of power. They have a sizable vote bank. Kerala has been the state in India which has the highest number of RSS shakas, but that has not translated into any gains for the BJP. BJP just, it's a bastion that it has not been able to reach. It has done well in West Bengal. It's making headway. It's making room in Odisha. So Tamil Nadu now, of course, Andhra Pradesh is another state where they've not been able to do very well. There is a dearth of leadership. There is, they've not really sort of, again, they don't have their own faces in the state. They've made some headway in Telangana. If you remember, if you were to compare the kind of buzz that has been generated about this whole Tamil Nadu plan, you can find the similarities between how the party went about in Telangana. Everybody assumed that the party will come to power in Telangana because it was making noise everywhere. Its leaders were everywhere. It had sort of, again, it had taken charge of the political narrative there. The same thing is being happening in Tamil Nadu. They are, they're trying to do everything. I mean, of course, the alliance with the AIDMK did not work out, but that did not dim their enthusiasm. They think that the party will be able to win between 3 to 5 seats, which people have to wait and see. But you have to admit that they are part of the discourse in Tamil Nadu now. It's no longer a Hindi, North Indian party. It's a party that has sort of made its intentions of, expanding its reach in Tamil Nadu very clear, and it is going about it.
I mean, I would go even farther than that, Smriti, to say I think if there's one state where the contest has been the kind of most intriguing and most exciting, where there's been the most buzz, it's probably been Tamil Nadu, right? Because, of course, you have an opening in the party system there with the DMK, which is the incumbent, remains powerful, but a steadily declining ADMK, which split Congress. And you have a very compelling BJP face in Annamalai, who seems to have established a kind of charisma, kind of rhetoric, and managed to take a kind of quote unquote Hindi heartland party and adapt it to local circumstances.
That's true. In fact, a lot of credit for that goes to Annamalai. People may not like him, people may not like what he says, his ideology, or his brusqueness or something, but the fact is that he has ensured that the BJP is talked about. It's something similar to what Bandi Sanjay did in Telangana. I mean, there were lots of people in Telangana, but if you ask people in the northern states what is the one name they know from Telangana, it will be Bandi Sanjay. So this whole street fighter image, this aggressive young angry man image, it works for them.
So I want to ask about one other individual in the party who's somebody you kind of profiled recently. His name is Vinod Thavde. I don't think most people outside of India, maybe most people inside of India haven't heard of him, but he's a BJP general secretary. You called him a, quote, headhunter, recruiter, and induction and orientation specialist, which I quite liked. He has been essentially responsible for recruiting defectors from other parties, an area where the BJP, let's face it, has had a lot of notable success lately. Tell us a little bit about who this man is. Where does he come from? And are his efforts ruffling feathers within the party? Because at the end of the day, this is a rank and file party. It's a cadre party, right? There is a system. Bringing in lateral entrants, if you want to use that term, can hurt a lot of people's sentiments. Tell us a little bit more about who this guy is.
So he's the National General Secretary of the party. It's a very important position. They're responsible for a lot of work that happens behind the scenes that we don't even get to hear of. But he is a dyed-in-the-wool RSS man. He started his career as an ABVP person. He rose pretty fast in the ABVP because of his organizational skills. He is this typical quintessential dedicated karyakarta, 24/7 working, person. Right now, he, among other things that he does, he also helps this whole acquisitions and mergers, getting people on board and whatever. So, he epitomizes the quintessential BJP RSS worker. You are dedicated, you work 24/7, you do what the party does, asks you to do, you follow the line, you do not protest. So, all of that he does. He ticks all those boxes. He has had, it's his, like I said, he rose pretty quickly in the ABVP, but there were many impediments in his growth in the BJP. He had a falling out with some of the senior leaders in his home state of Maharashtra. He was out in the cold for a couple of years. And naturally, people began to write him off, and people thought that, his time is come and gone, and, perhaps something in the state might come up. But he was picked and brought to Delhi, and he was groomed to, sort of take care of the party's growth, identify leaders. He was head of the screening committee, which basically vetted all the applicants that were to join the BJP, particularly from other parties, because they wanted to make sure that they're picking on the right people, they're bringing on board the right people. So he's done all of that. He's also been trained by the very best. In the RSS, he was trained by Madan Das Devi. In the BJP, he was groomed by Pramod Mahajan. So he got the best of both. In fact, he while recollecting how he was trained by Madan Das Devi, he once told me that as an ABVP worker, General Secretary, he was sent to, sort of tour the entire Maharashtra state. And when he came back, he was asked to submit a report. And he said, he talked about, this is where we are going wrong, and this is what is happening in this district, and whatever. So Mr. Devi asked him, so in that X particular district, what is the name of the the pracharak, or what is the name of what do you know the name of the son of the general secretary or the district secretary in X or Y district? So he said, I was thrown off, and I said, why does he want me to know their names? Why would I want to know somebody's son's name? So he said, that's the first stop. That's where you start. You make connections, you make personal connections with every worker on the ground, and that's the bridge that you build.
Completely fascinating, and these are people who are not really in the limelight.
Oh, and he doesn't
so we don't
like
hear about
in the limelight at all. He's somebody who's extremely reticent to talk about himself. He was most upset about his profile also because he likes to stay out of the limelight, stay out of the news, do what he's told. That's about it.
So Smriti, as we kind of wrap up, let me just ask you one final thing, kind of thinking ahead here. By the time this episode airs, we will have had the second phase. Of course, we still will have 5 more phases to go. I mean, there's still 37 days, I think, until this thing is wrapped up. As you look ahead, what are some of the things as a reporter you're looking out for, right? Are there dynamics, kind of milestones, signs, lingering questions? What's kind of on the horizon for you as you look out over the next 30 days or so?
So, of course, like you have these, if you call them the swing states in the US, we have a set of swing states too in India now. You have West Bengal, you have Bihar, you have Maharashtra. This is going to be a very interesting election, particularly in these states. We want to see how the party does. There is a lot of ground that the party has covered here. In BJP, in Bihar, for instance, I mean, look at how the BJP sort of swung things around. Look at how it managed to come back to power. I mean, who would have thought? I mean, one day they were saying this is done and over with, Nitish Kumar, we are never going back to him. And then again, Nitish Kumar was back into the party fold and he's a friend, etc., etc. The same thing has happened in Maharashtra. But we can't, sort of neglect to register that there is a sentiment on the ground against the party also in some quarters. For instance, this... the fact that there has been a lot of jor-tod, parties have been split. It's not sort of, it's not a good look on the party. For instance, the Shiva Sena. There's a lot of sentiment on the ground which is very sympathetic to Uddhav Thackeray. They think the BJP did not do him well. His father was one of the first people to lend support to the BJP, the earliest ally. And, things fell apart over seat sharing, over power sharing. It could have been handled better. Again, there was a break in communication. People should have, sort of kept talking. So all of those things. I mean, again, they engineered a fracture in the NCP also. So while people may not particularly, sort of support the NCP, but this whole image of a family being divided, other than just the party, there is going to be some kind of a, reaction from the ground on these issues. These things are going to be very interesting to watch on. So far, like I said, the BJP sort of harps on this whole pro and incumbency factor. But is this really going to work after 2 terms in 10 years in power? Is it really going to work? Are people going to be slightly, is there some kind of apathy that is going to set in? Are people going to be just plain bored, maybe, because when you talk to the younger people, the younger voters, particularly even in states like Gujarat, I mean, I've met so many young people in universities who say, but this is the only party that we've seen. I mean, why not give the others a chance? In fact, the Gujarat state election of 2017, there was a lot of anger, a lot of appetite for change on the ground. So, and we did see the numbers come down drastically that year. So it'll be very interesting to see how the young people, they are a coveted category other than women and, the marginalized sections. But we want to see these aspirational young people, how will they react to the party's promises?
Just one final thing. Commend to people the piece by Pratap Bhanu Mehta from earlier this week, which came out in the aftermath of Narendra Modi's controversial speech in Rajasthan, where essentially he talked about this issue of boredom, right? This isn't really a question, to his mind, I think to most people's minds, of the BJP losing or necessarily worried about, rising Congress, what have you. It's really about ensuring that there's some action, there's some masala, there's not this sense of complacency or boredom, right? You have to constantly stimulate. And when you have a party that's been in power for 10 years, there is a real danger that people kind of say, okay, yeah, I mean, it's hard to get motivated to vote for somebody for the 3rd time, even if they're your kind of preferred party, right? So I think kind of guarding against this boredom by injecting what have you, it could be attacking Rahul Gandhi one day, it could be a Hindutva trope one day, it could be a particular gesture or symbolism or advertisement, right? I think these are all things that over the next month are going to continuously play out.
That's true. And that fear of boredom setting in is not only about the electorate. It can happen in the party itself. If you look at the kind of relentless work that this party has put its people to since 2014, since before 2014, since the 2013, when they began the whole election process, because they begin very early. That's the thing about BJP. So every day, everybody is given a task. There is no day off for them. There is no, every week there are these targets identified for them, how many people they have to connect with, how many activities they have to carry out. So there is a fatigue factor among the cadre itself. That is something that the BJP has been very concerned about. Like we spoke earlier, that they feel that a lot of people, because traditionally a cadre-based party believed in boots on the ground approach. Social media, of course, added to their whole outreach exercise, but they still prefer, person-to-person connect. So all of that, to sustain it, is very difficult. If you've been doing this relentlessly for 10 years and you plan to do it for the next 5, then you have to keep your cadre really motivated. You have to really look after them, because at the end of the day, they have families and they have businesses to run. So it's a challenge.
My guest on the show this week is the journalist Smriti Kak Ramachandran. She covers the BJP for the Hindustan Times. She covers a party that seems not to sleep. As a result, she has not slept very much, and you have to keep this going for the next 37 days. Congrats on all of your reporting. It's been a pleasure to read, and we look forward to your dispatches from phases 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, all the way up to counting day. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Grant Tamasha is a co-production of the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace and the Hindustan Times. This podcast is an HT Smartcast original and is available on htsmartcast.com. You can also find us on Apple Podcasts, Google, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Don't forget to rate and review. It helps others find the show more easily. For more information about the show and to find the writing we mentioned on this week's episode, visit our website, grantthemasha.com. Tim Martin is our audio engineer, and Mira Verghese is our executive producer. Thanks for listening, and see you next week.
This was a Hindustan Times production brought to you by HT Smartcast.
HT Smartcast.